Well, who's for a boat ride? I know a few in the congregation were going to have cruises this year. Cancelled, I'm afraid. When will the cruise ships be used again? That's a good question. But have your boat trips, if you've had one, been joy or agony? I'm not a good sailor. So for me, they tend to be slightly agonizing. The trip back from Guernsey is particularly memorable for the queasiness that it caused, and I didn't think I'd ever be the same again. This autumn we're thinking about the story of Jonah, a wonderful comic satire of this prophet, this anti-hero who does all the wrong things but somehow brings Nineveh to God. And he decides to have a boat ride. He's been told by God to go to Nineveh. That's certainly not by the sea. But instead, he goes the opposite direction, to Tarshish. And his boat ride is certainly a memorable one. Nineveh there's a picture, the next slide I think, yes. Nineveh, 550 miles, quite a trek. But he goes to Joppa, the port, and heads off 2,500 miles to Tarshish. And it's quite a trip. The Israelites, the people of Judah, and Israel were not sailors. This was not a great seafaring nation. They weren't like the Vikings or the Phoenicians. They were pretty scared of the sea. And so it must have been a pretty desperate act to decide to go on that long journey. And it doesn't turn out well. He ends up in the water. Traveling. God calls Jonah one direction, and he goes the opposite. In the end, he ends up not in a boat, but a rather unusual form of transportation. I don't know, the next slide is, oh, there he is, looking a bit wet. Some big fish, some sea monster, some whale is God's chosen way of transport to bring Jonah back so he can go to Nineveh. It's a wonderfully comic story. But it challenges us to think about our direction. What way are we going? Are we going with God, or are we going the opposite direction? Is God calling us to do something, to go out, to reach out to someone in need at the moment, and we're deciding, nothing to do with me, I'm going the opposite direction?